Hey everyone, you are watching the Ready to Stare channel where I bring you plus size fashion, travel, and lifestyle content both on here and on my blog, readytostare.com. Today I have such an exciting partnership for you with Orbitz. It is one of the most amazing online travel agencies that exists because they are so committed to the LGBTQ plus community. And one of the most recent things that they've done is started a microsite specifically designed to help LGBTQ travelers find safe and LGBTQ friendly accommodations all over the world. Specifically, a lot of US based destinations, but some international ones as well. So this isn't a new thing. Being a part of the LGBTQ community is not some trend that Orbitz is just hopping on now. They actually have a pretty good history of being involved in the community. Their first ad that supported the LGBTQ community was back in 2001. This print ad had the tagline, "See the world on your terms." In 2002, they launched gayorbitz.com, and this was the first online travel agency to launch a website dedicated to the LGBTQ travel space. Over the years, Orbitz has continued its commitment to the LGBTQ travel community and the greater community as a whole. In 2016, Orbitz profiled and highlighted Orlando Black Pride following the tragic Pulse shootings. And they also highlighted Fort Lauderdale as a safe destination for transgender travelers. They look at the LGBTQ travel space as more than just this is where cis gay white men can go. They look at it as truly being where are safe places for everyone in this community to go. And as a queer woman traveler, to me, this is just something that I find to be so important, especially as someone who often travels with their husband who is a Black trans man. In 2019, they decided to launch the microsite, the LGBTQ travel microsite, in honor of World Pride. This microsite specifically for Pride featured friendly hotels that you could visit in big cities like New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, Washington, D.C., and San Francisco. This year in 2020, Orbitz is really helping you to travel with Pride. On this site, let me just tell you, it's a real wealth of information. Not only do they have a whole bunch of different cities where you can click on the city and then see where you want to go. They also have recommendations from local LGBTQ influencers and celebrities like my friends Ravi from Ravi Around the World and Gabby and Shanna from 27 Travels, also Todrick Hall and Lance Bass, giving you recommendations of where to go in their city. So I absolutely love that they partnered with some amazing influencers. Their recommendations are right there on the microsite. But in addition, you can click on a city and then see what places you can go to within those cities. So now I'm gonna break down some of the cities that are listed on the microsite that you can find LGBTQ friendly accommodations, all places that I have traveled to. So once you're on the microsite, you're going to see little boxes that list city names, and I'm gonna go through some of the cities that I visited that I really love, that I find to be LGBTQ friendly. So let's start with South Florida. There's 3 different cities within South Florida listed on the Orbitz microsite for LGBTQ travel. And that's because South Florida is really a big destination for LGBTQ travelers. It's very friendly in Fort Lauderdale, Miami, and also Key West. Those offer different things, whether it be nightlife, the art scene, or somewhere just to relax and know that you can hold hands with your partner without feeling like you're not in a safe space. So definitely check out Fort Lauderdale, Miami, and Key West. Personally, of those cities, I've been to Miami the most. I've also been for Art Basel. I've left to go on a cruise from there many times. So Miami is probably the place I've been to most, but I have an upcoming trip to Fort Lauderdale, and I'm so excited to explore that more. I've heard that that's an amazing place for transgender travelers as well as queer women travelers. So I cannot wait to visit Fort Lauderdale. I've never been to Key West, but it's definitely on my list. I feel like it looks like a great place to relax and just be yourself. In California, there's a few different cities that you can find on the microsite. San Francisco, of course, Los Angeles, and then nearby Palm Springs. They all offer something different, and I visited all 3 of them. And I like them all for different reasons. San Francisco is so rooted in history. There's a lot of things to explore. obviously the gay and LGBTQ community there is really, really thriving. I went before I was out, back when I was in college, and I absolutely loved it. I went to an inclusive LGBTQ burlesque show, and I really felt like I was free to be myself, and I didn't feel like it was so exclusive of women. So I felt like it was an inclusive space. Definitely need to go back now as an out queer woman, but loved San Francisco when I visited the first time. Obviously goes without saying that that is one of the LGBTQ destinations in the city. Los Angeles, I have been there both closeted and out, and I love it. I think that there's so much to do, so much to see and eat and drink in West Hollywood, of course, and there's a lot of culture, arts, film, and then the beach. The beach is right there. So I absolutely love Los Angeles. It's a nice, inclusive city. And then just a few hours away is Palm Springs. Palm Springs is such a destination for LGBTQ travelers. I always saw, you know, the Rainbow Hotel and all of these things, and I was just like, I gotta get to Palm Springs. And I actually went there with a group of friends, some of whom were also LGBTQ, and I really felt like that was a place where we could just relax, recharge, and we went to Joshua Tree, and it was just a really nice area, again, where I felt like free to be myself. Next on the list on the LGBTQ travel microsite is Las Vegas. Now, Las Vegas is not necessarily like a LGBTQ destination, but it's one of those places where, yeah, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, so you can really be yourself, and there is something for everybody. I have personally been to Vegas quite a few times. I went there for my sister's divorce party, and then I also went there for my bachelorette party, where I had a rainbow themed bachelorette party, and I definitely made it known that I was an LGBTQ bride, and I didn't feel like anywhere I went was excluding me or made me feel like I couldn't be there. So I went to drag brunch at Senor Frogs, where you can see a lot of the drag queens from RuPaul's Drag Race there, and you know, I just basically was out and proud in Vegas on my bachelorette party, and I felt totally safe. So there is something for everybody, and while it's not necessarily a place where you can find art and culture and all of these things, it's a place where you can be yourself. So I definitely appreciate Vegas for what it is. And you know, I can't see a city that has hosted some of the most iconic divas ever, such as Cher and Celine Dion and Britney and Elton John. All of these icons have shows in Vegas, so it's got to be an LGBTQ city, right? So that is on the microsite, and I definitely am always looking for cheap flights to Vegas. It's just a fun place to visit. So I've only been to New Orleans once. I went there with Gio, my husband, who is a Black trans man. I bring that into this because I would say that traveling together, you know, we always get asked what's the most difficult part of traveling together as an LGBTQ couple, and for us it's mostly the racial difference that people notice most, because he does pass as a trans man and people don't necessarily know that he's trans or that I'm queer without us outing ourselves. So that was one of the first trips that we went on. That was the longest trip. We were there for like a full 7 days. Before that we had only done like weekend trips, and we definitely felt comfortable there to be LGBTQ, and we loved exploring the city. Gio doesn't drink, so I wouldn't say that we got the same experience as people who are really into nightlife, but we loved walking around. There was a great sneaker culture there, which Gio really loves, and yeah, I felt like there was, you know, anytime I see rainbow flags, I know that it's a place where I can be accepted. The intersection of Bourbon Street and St. Anne is really where the LGBTQ community in New Orleans thrives. So I'm really looking forward to going back soon, hopefully in the future, to explore more. And I'll definitely be checking the microsite for where to stay. Next up on our LGBTQ friendly destinations in the US is obviously New York City. This is where Stonewall happened. This is where we celebrated World Pride last year in 2019. This is where everything goes down in terms of LGBTQ nightlife and fashion and culture. There's so much happening in New York. But one thing that I really love about the microsite is that it really tells you where the locals like to go. Both Ravi and Gabby and Shanna from 27 Travels are from New York, and so they gave really unique picks of where you can go in the city beyond just like what the tourist recommendations are. So I know Gabby and Shanna love Cubby Hole, which is a lesbian bar, and lesbian bars are so hard to find anywhere in the US. So much LGBTQ nightlife nightlife is dominated by men. So it's nice that there are still some lesbian bars, and that's one of the best ones. Next up on the LGBTQ microsite of LGBTQ cities to visit in the US is Atlanta. So I actually lived in Atlanta for about 14 months. So I was out, but not really out. And so I don't feel like I really got to experience the LGBTQ nightlife as much as I would have liked while I lived in Atlanta. But I definitely did spend time in Midtown, which is the LGBTQ area of downtown Atlanta, and there's so much to do there. Lots of art, lots of culture, lots of music and film, all in Atlanta. So that's a city that, even though I live there, I feel like I need to explore it now even more. I would say that's one of the best cities in the South to travel to. I never felt unsafe as an LGBTQ person, but obviously it's still the South, so you still have to be careful. And finally, our last US city is Chicago. I lived in Chicago for 7 years, including 4 years when I was in college and then 3 years after. So Chicago is the city that I know the best. I love Chicago. It's the city where I first realized that I was fluid. I went to my first Pride in Chicago, and then I also went to my first Pride back in 2017 when I first finally came out. That was the first Pride that I went to, where I held my Pride flag and knew that that's where I belonged, and that I wasn't just there as an ally, I was there as someone who is part of the community. So Chicago holds such a huge place in my heart. I lived in Boys Town, which is the gayborhood in Chicago, so I lived there while I lived in Chicago, and we used to ride our bikes and walk to all of the gay bars, to Berlin to dance, and to Sidetrack for slushies. And we would eat at Wild. They have amazing mac and cheese. But then we would go to other places all over Chicago. There's a few different neighborhoods that are really LGBTQ friendly, including Andersonville. There's Big Chicks, which is an iconic LGBTQ space in Uptown. There's the Leather Museum in Rogers Park. There is so much to do. There's also more like, again, I haven't lived there since 2013, so perhaps these things have changed. But there was a lot of hipstery LGBTQ and queer spaces in Ukrainian Village and Worker Park and Bucktown. So there's so much to do in the city of Chicago. It's absolutely a must visit in terms of an LGBTQ friendly destination. In addition to some LGBTQ friendly cities in the US, there are a few international destinations that Orbitz lists on the microsite. I haven't been to a whole lot of them, which is sad, but I have been to a few. A few other cities that are on the list that are international that I haven't been to would be Buenos Aires, Ibiza, Tulum, Lisbon, Bangkok. All of those are all on the list. Places that I have been that are on the list would be Rome. I lived in Rome for 4 months. I studied abroad there. And I definitely remember going out to the gay bars and just feeling like, of all the places in Italy still that I visited, Rome was obviously the most inclusive place to be LGBTQ. I felt, now that was in 2008, so that was a while ago, so I'm sure it's only gotten better. But I definitely felt like safest being out in Rome. Another place that I visited that felt very LGBTQ friendly and is also on the microsite is London. London is basically, to me, it feels a lot like New York with accents and not as good French fries. Sorry, not sorry. So London is very much has the same feel of a New York City. It's an inclusive city where you just see all kinds of people and no one really looks twice at you if you're holding hands with your partner or anything like that. London is definitely that place where you can be yourself. Another city that I went to, so I went to London on my honeymoon with Gio, and then I also went to Paris on my honeymoon with Gio. And in both of those cities, we truly felt like no one was staring at us for being an interracial couple or for being LGBTQ. If anything, they were like, oh, look at those Americans. So there is no real issue as far as I'm concerned with either one of those cities not being safe. I feel like those are Both big cities, they're fashion meccas, and they're so great to visit if you're an LGBTQ traveler. I've been to Prague, that's also on the list, but again, I went there when I was in college. I don't feel like I really had the LGBTQ experience, but I would love to go back. There's so many places that I want to visit. Toronto is another LGBTQ destination. I've been there. That's one of Gio's absolute favorite cities. And I, again, want to explore more of the nightlife aspect. We've done a lot of the shopping, but the shopping is great. So these are just some of the LGBTQ friendly destinations that you can find bookings for on the LGBTQ microsite from Orbitz. This is an amazing resource, and although I know travel doesn't look the same right now, we're not necessarily traveling to big cities, and we're definitely not traveling internationally. It's always good to just know that there are resources out there, and that when the time comes, you'll have this resource to travel. You can also use this resource to plan for the future. So a lot of these places, they are booking for 2021, 2022. So if you want to just do your research and kind of make your bucket list and your wish list of all the places you want to visit, this is a good way to get started. There's different articles on LGBTQ owned hotels and what the best LGBTQ spaces are in each state. So some of the places that are listed in the state guide are places that I've been to on my road trips this year. I haven't been traveling to major cities because I don't feel comfortable or safe going to big cities right now, but I have gone to some of the smaller destinations that are listed on the state by state guide. So I've been to the Matthew Shepard Memorial, which is it's not necessarily a place of celebration, but it is a place that holds an important space in our community, memorializing the death of Matthew Shepard in Laramie, Wyoming. So I have been there. That is the place they suggest that you visit in Wyoming. I've also been to Provincetown in Massachusetts, which is, again, this is one of the smaller but most well-known LGBTQ destinations, and it truly feels like everyone is queer and everyone has a dog, which to me is like basically heaven. Plus, there's this amazing Christmas shop that I really, really love, and they even have some LGBTQ gay mermaids. It's amazing. So Provincetown, Commercial Street is a must-visit, iconic LGBTQ destination, but it's a smaller city, so you might not necessarily find it on the microsite, but you can find tips for any city that you want to visit, any state that you want to visit. They have tips on there. So they're constantly expanding this content. To check it out, make sure you visit the link below. And let me know where you are planning your next trip to. And so maybe we can hang out. Maybe we'll meet somewhere, you know? Like, let's go on the road together and just be fabulous and LGBTQ and safe. And yeah. Bye. I don't know what else to say.
Roadie to stare.
Roadie to stare.